Welcome into K-State Online. I am Mason Voth. That is Drew Galloway, and we come to you on this Saturday, the first full slate of Big 12 basketball games, although that's not even technically true anymore because the Big 12 now plays games on Sundays, which is very stupid. So I guess, we're just like every other dumb conference out there. Like, leave the Sundays open. I didn't need it. I'm sure at some point late in the year, I'll be like, I'm glad that I have something to do on Sundays that involves good basketball, but I'm not.
None of the Sunday games on this Big 12 slate, I don't think, are anything special, though.
Yeah, no, they're bad. I mean, KU UCF is tomorrow, so that's like, who cares? K-State's games are against Arizona State and Colorado. Again, who cares? So yeah, you're right. They didn't put any barn burners on Sundays in the Big 12 this year. Next weekend is West Virginia, Colorado. The following weekend is TCU, Baylor. And then Oklahoma State, Texas Tech. Yeah, it's not good. Not good at all. West Virginia, Cincinnati might be interesting, although Cincinnati frauds, as we are finding out in front of us, because they lost on Monday night to K-State, who just lost to TCU. 63-62, the final score. The Horned Frogs take care of business in Fort Worth after K-State trailed for a majority of the first half. They fought, hung around, got themselves in it, took the lead, and then K-State led for a majority of the second half. Unfortunately for the Wildcats, they once again had some serious problems closing out games, and then when you needed a final shot, they just weren't able to get it, and it probably looked very similar to what a lot of people assume was going to happen with this team. A guard is just going to dribble, and he's going to drive, and he's not going to get the kind of look that you want. And also, the refs aren't going to gift you a foul in this situation. So we have to start there because that's going to be the number one thing on everybody's mind, because they're going to think back to how many times last year K-State had situations like that and they failed at the end of games. And what makes it all the more frustrating for people probably is when you think back to year one of Jerome Tang. That was something that they seemed to be good at, coming out of those timeouts and getting what they wanted. But that has a lot to do with two guys that logged minutes in the NBA last year with Keontae Johnson and Marquise Noel. And K-State, not any of those guys on this team. They fall today 63-62 to TCU. So what did you make of that final play that K-State had after they give TCU the opportunity to take the lead back, and it comes on the heels of missed free throws that are unacceptable?
Out of, if we're like doing a power ranking of where that possession ranks in terms of like last second opportunities K-State's had, I know it seems weird because they still missed it, but like that's still one of the best, at least looks that they've gotten in a last second situation. I mean, even this year, the Drake game, obviously the end of regulation possession was just a mess. And even the possession that Coleman Hawkins hits the three on to tie the game was kind of a mess. This one, you at least got something going to the rim. You'd probably, in an ideal world, wouldn't want it to be Doug McDaniel because smaller guards just aren't going to get a call in that situation because they're just going to get wailed on. But he was so good in that second half of just being able to break guys down and getting to the bucket that I can kind of see where they came from. And especially going earlier and getting it up on the rim and seeing, because for a minute there, it seemed like K-State's best offense was just throwing the ball at the rim and going and grabbing an offensive rebound. But for me, the bigger overarching story of the game is kind of how they ended the Drake game. It's how they ended the Cincinnati game Monday night, even though they won. The last 4 minutes of games, K-State isn't getting any easy baskets. And I think that that's something that even Thursday, on our Thursday edition of the Sunday show, that we all kind of talked about. Like, the offense in a half court just has no flow, no rhythm, no real rhyme or reason to what ends up happening. And you really saw that in the last 3 minutes because K-State goes up 62-56, I believe, and doesn't score the rest of the way.
Yeah. And when that happens, the game should really be over there. You should find a way in that moment to do that. especially when you're in the bonus, and K-State just wasn't able to. And they lack, I think, direction. I think guys get sped up and panicked, and that I just think there's so many things that are wrong with how they handle
It,
those situations.
it's almost like they try and take the air out of the ball too early,
Yeah. Which
and they did it.
which was the other thing we talked about. Like, they totally change how they do things late in the game, and you can't play two-way basketball in the Big 12 to try and close out games. You have to go out there and continue to try to win it. Now, if you're up 9 points with a minute and a half left and you want to bleed some clock, go for it, because they're going to have to foul you. There's enough possessions there where they have to do that. But you were only up 2 possessions. Like, that game was still shrunk down pretty good theoretically. And so TCU wasn't going to do anything stupid. And teams, TCU probably had to welcome the fact that K-State wanted to play like that. Same for Cincinnati on Monday night.
Yeah, and I'm just like, I'm looking at some of these possessions, and they were, one was a really bad shot by Brendan Hawthorne. One was, I believe, a turnover. Like, there just weren't good possessions down the stretch where K-State was able to get an easy basket. And to be fair, on the other end, outside of the last basket of the game, it's not like K-State was giving up easy baskets. It's just that when you aren't being able to create some on your own, you can get beaten, especially when you're on the road in Big 12 play. I mean, I said before the meltdown at the end of the game happened, like, this is about as bad as you can be on the road in Big 12 play and maybe come out with a win. But instead, K-State found ways to, like, this was the master class on how to lose a game, kind of like the Houston football game was. Like, this was how
Yeah.
to lose a basketball game.
Yeah.
You don't get to the free throw line. Now, not all of that is your fault, but you don't get to the free throw line a ton today. And when you do, you miss 2 front ends when you're in the lead in the last minute of the game. And you don't score for the last 3:13 when you're only up 7. I mean, that is how you lose on the road to Big 12 play.
Yeah, and there are certainly things that K-State didn't do well. That is their fault. They turned the ball over 12 times today, which is a small number, but they didn't force TCU to turn it over that much. Only 6 turnovers for TCU throughout the course of the game. K-State easily won the rebounding margin, 47-36, and they were 18-10 on offensive boards, so they had a lot of extra chances throughout the game. But again, they turned it over 6 more times. So really, if you're looking at how that would equate to, I think there's a world where you can subtract offensive rebounds and turnovers from each other, and then that kind of boils down to where you set up, and the difference isn't as much because those are the extra possessions throughout the game. So if you gave away 12 turnovers and you only had 18 offensive boards, you can, it's again not accurate math, but you gave away 12 possessions, you earned 18 more, it nets to 6. K-State just wasn't able to execute fully in that, because if you go and look, K-State, despite winning the offensive rebounding battle, they get beaten second chance points 19-13 tonight. That's just, again, something that can't really happen when you get that many boards. And some of it also comes down to bad luck for K-State, because they were 6 of 28 from 3 in the game. Look, there were some shots that you can certainly criticize. I did. I don't like some of the way this team is playing at times with their rhythm, but for the most part, they got a lot of decent looks that I wouldn't have discouraged against guys shooting. They just didn't go in early on, and it dug them into a hole where they probably could have been up by 7 to 10 points, and instead they trailed by a bucket at halftime. The other thing in this game that is a wild card that you just can't really control is the officiating. And the fact that TCU went to the free throw line 11 more times, like, TCU did not shoot free throws well in this game either. But like I was telling you before we started, K-State at 40% for the game, if they shoot 11 more, they're making like 2 or 3 of them, and there's your difference in this game. I thought some of the calls that went against K-State were weak. And then I thought on the other end, for a team that I know TCU is the more aggressive team, for them to not get more foul calls than K-State or an equal amount is a little bit of a head scratcher. And then there were times where the refs, I think they were scratching their heads and decided that They weren't going to call anything, and then guys would fall down, and they're like, oh, crap, we got to call the travel now. It's like, step up and make the call. Refs are so scared sometimes to make calls, and that happened throughout this game where I thought it was a bad day for them. They didn't see the floor well. Obviously, K-State didn't see the floor well at times, and neither did TCU. But TCU, when you're at home, you have the better chance to grind this thing out. K-State really shouldn't have lost this game, though. Okay, K-State gave this game away, and to me, this illustrates the bigger point of how difficult it is going to be long-term for this team to try and make up for how bad they were in the non-con. You think you've got a game that you can maybe take, and this happens. It illustrates just how difficult it's going to be in the Big 12, because you're going to have games where the opponent you face on the road is going to play a lot better than TCU did today, and you still found a way to lose this one. Even if K-State had won, I was going to make this point, because it shows just how thin the margin is for teams to get these wins that they need. And winning here would have been big, because you would think that K-State can beat Oklahoma State on Tuesday night, but who knows at this point now. And this just sets K-State up in a tougher spot where you really need to just start counting it down. And there's 18 games left in Big 12 play. K-State has to win 11 of those 18 to give themselves any chance to be an NCAA tournament team this season.
Yeah, and that's the real killer, because we laid it out on Thursday, and I was trying to build that path like throughout the game, because for as bad as K-State played, they were probably still the better team tonight, even though TCU ends up winning in the last seconds. But it really puts pressure on how the end of the season goes, and like now there are a handful of games that I would say are circled as you really can't lose this one. Tuesday is one, at Utah is another, and then you probably, as silly as it sounds, like you have to find a way to sweep Arizona State now, because there are just going to be games that you have to win to just keep racking up wins. But this is something that DY actually pointed out in his pick and preview today, and you already hit on it. If you're going to win on the road in this league, like, you have to find a way to win in the margins. K-State lost the free throw battle. They lost the points off turnover battle and lost the second chance points battle. And I'm not sure if there's going to be another game this year where K-State gets as many offensive rebounds as they did tonight. David Gasson and Max Jones really rebounded well and crashed the glass well, and they weren't able to capitalize. Like, this is the loss that it kind of feels hard to come back from. And that's where Tuesday becomes extremely important, because you have to come out and be focused. And we said minimum 2-1. You'd like to be 3-0, but this kind of feels like the Texas Tech game from last year. Yeah, you're on mute.
Really a lot of similarities to last year's game with Texas Tech. And the only difference was K-State shot it better in that game last year. But if you go and look, K-State, the turnovers, 18-9. Texas Tech won the turnover battle. K-State didn't get as many boards, but the free throw line was huge in that game. K-State only shot 7 free throws. Texas Tech shot 18. The next game that I would say on the road that K-State was close in, the final score didn't necessarily reflect it as much, but the pacing of the game was there. The game at Iowa State, which to me might have been one of the more significant turning points of the season. K-State shoots 23 free throws. Difference was Iowa State shot 16 of them. And then turnovers, K-State turned it over 17 to Iowa State's 15. So they lost both of those columns there as well. They also were out rebounded on the offensive glass, 13-7. Then you look at the Oklahoma State game last year. K-State, 7 free throws. Oklahoma State, 18 free throws. Turnovers, K-State, 15. Oklahoma State, 11. The BYU game last year, K-State, 12 free throws. BYU, 9. Turnovers in that game, K-State, 16. BYU, 7. Texas, a 6-point loss on the road. K-State, 16 free throws. Texas, 24. Turnovers, K-State 13, Texas 9, and then the game at Cincinnati to close out the year. K-State, actually, that one, you're probably asking yourself how it happened. I'll tell you in a second, because K-State shot 25 free throws in that game to Cincinnati's 8. The difference maker was the fact that K-State turned the ball over 19 times and Cincinnati turned it over 6. But the main reoccurring problem there is the free throw rate on the road. K-State is not getting the same amount of shots at the line as their opponent, and it's by a significant margin. I mean, it seems like at least every time there, it was 7 at the minimum. Most of the time, it was 10 plus that K-State was getting outshot by at the free throw line. It's such a big deal, and again, you're definitely not going to get the benefit when you're on the road with the whistle, but there has to be something that's done a little bit differently. And there have been times where I've been critical about Jerome Tang when he's gotten his technical fouls since being the coach at K-State, but there have also been times where I've said that that's the right moment and I support it. The technical that he got in Lawrence, I think maybe he's been teed up both years in Lawrence that he's coached there, but the one that I remember is he made the comment, I think you can read his lips, where he says, "We're not doing this today," or something. Like, you can try that now in Fieldhouse. It's probably not going to work for you. But by golly, at one point in the first half, I think it might have worked in Shawmeyer Arena today. And I think that I do think that you have to ride the refs a little bit more, especially when you look at who the officiating crew was today. It was Greg Nixon, Christopher Merlot, and James Ford. Now, for the people watching this, do any of you have any clue who those guys are? No, not at all. Because Drew texted, he's like, who's the ginger ref? And I was like, oh, that's Greg Nixon here. You can't do that type of thing and think that it's going to work out too well for you when it's Doug Sermons that has the whistle in his hand. Or, if it's Tony Padilla out there, or some of these guys that have done it for a long time. John Higgins is not going to fall for that crap when he was out there. But I can guarantee you that you can probably do it to Greg Nixon, Christopher Merlot, and James Ford. So that's one area that I'm not criticizing Jerome Tang, because I don't think coaches should ever be criticized for not getting technical fouls. But I do think that is an element that, again, you got to learn. You got to find a way to get better in these margins. Jamie Dixon bitches to officials more than about anybody in the Big 12. And it seems to work out for him. I think you have to know the situation. And today, to me, it felt like the situation was right for it. Think back to that video of Terry Collins and Tom Hallion when Noah Syndergaard threw it at the batter, and he comes out there and he's all ticked off and he's calling him not very nice names and everything. And he's saying, you got to give us a shot. And Tom's like, in the situation, Terry. The situation today called for you to ride the refs if you're Jerome Tang. I think that's one of those things that you have to understand that. And who knows, maybe it helps, maybe it doesn't. But I don't think it was going to hurt you because you already got blasted with the way the refs officiated the game in terms of, how fouls were called and everything, because the total number ends up being in the game. K-State committed 19 fouls. TCU committed 13. And then, like we mentioned, K-State 5 free throws, TCU 16.
I would even add too, and this isn't necessarily a criticism of K-State staff, but you also just have to do a better job of being able to manufacture whistles. When you're shooting 22 threes in the first half, it's hard to get a whistle when you're just a jump shooting team. And I think that there is a little bit of blame to that, because I think if K-State works it inside a little bit more, because there were 6 of 12 from 2 in the first half, that if you keep working and getting into the lane, you're probably going to find more whistles there. But how wild is it? And it ends up sucking for how the game turns out for K-State. The only 2 free throws made in the game were on a 4-point play.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you look at the others. David Gasson got 2 of them, which just is never going to work out in your favor. And then Doug McDaniel can't miss his free throws. This is one of the more disappointing things throughout the course of this season for K-State has been the fact that Coleman Hawkins, we've talked about, has struggled at the free throw line at a level that is unheard of for him. Doug McDaniel is in the same boat. He entered today shooting 65% at the free throw line this season. I don't think that adding in his 1 miss today drastically changes it. It drops it to 62%. But in his career coming into this, he was a 77% free throw shooter. And to be now down by 62%, like that's just one of those little areas that can change the course of a game. You know, it's not going to change the Wichita State game for how bad things were. But Doug McDaniel missed a free throw in the game against Drake. So like that's one of those that you kind of go and look at. And then we've talked about Coleman Hawkins and the struggles that he's had at the free throw line this season, because you look at what he's done. He's 53% at the free throw line this year. Coming into it, he was a 68% career shooter at the free throw line. Last year, he'd upped it all the way to 79%. And that was on the most free throw attempts per game that he'd had in his career. So for some reason, there's been this massive drop off this year, and it's really hampered K-State in some of these situations, because you go and you can look at how things have shook out in losses. Coleman Hawkins was 3 of 8 at the free throw line against Drake. And today, look, Hawkins didn't go there, but Doug McDaniel, front end of the 1-and-1, you cannot have your lead guard missing the free throws. Because the thing is, he's going to be in more situations like that, you would think, because the ball's going to come into him. He's your quickest guy. He can get open the easiest. And if teams need to foul, you need him to be able to at least guarantee you one of those goes down.
Going to get overshadowed in the loss, but that's a great play by Coleman Hawkins to get the block that got Davis on the ball.
Yeah, and look, you know, I texted you beforehand. I said it's kind of actually unfortunate that was blocked, because it ended up right in Gassan's hands, and that's the one guy in that situation. You just go, he's tried to work on it. He's K-State's most consistent player, but he's also pretty consistently missing free throws. And tonight, it unfortunately bit K-State again, and that's one of the things that teams have to try to deal with. When one of your best players is also your worst free throw shooter, you're going to live and die by it sometimes. And unfortunately, the ball found David Gasson, and he wasn't able to help out the cause either. So many things that went wrong for K-State tonight that moved them to 1-1 in Big 12 play, now 7-6 overall. And they just move another step closer to really mathematically eliminating themselves from the NCAA tournament conversation. Again, I know that sounds silly for a lot of people, and it is, to think like it's a giant uphill climb that K-State has to face to get there. But that's really the only thing that's going on in this season for K-State. Like, if they don't make the NCAA tournament, this isn't really a roster where you go, well, they're young, they're building, you know, like that would have been the attitude. That was the attitude after 2016, Dean, Barry, and Cam, their freshman year. Okay. You know, you saw some things, whatever. Now you bring back a bunch of these guys next year outside of like 2 or 3 contributors. It's going to be okay. What do you know? They ripped off 3 straight tourney runs, an Elite 8, a Big 12 title. They got it figured out. That's not the case with this team. This is not a young team. This is a team that, you know, some of the guys that contributed tonight, they will not be here next year. They don't have eligibility. But a handful of guys will be back. And one that, you know, gave a good burst in the minutes he played was Michaela Rich. And I would throw out there that is kind of the role right now that I think Michaela Rich can serve. And he's not going to have it in every game. He's not going to even have the opportunity in every game. But he came in there. He made his shots when he had the opportunity, brought some energy. He's just got to try and make sure he's not a liability on the defensive end, which he kind of was in the first half. That's why he only got 2 minutes and then was out of there. But that was a positive to see. I know a lot of fans will like that as well. So props to him for it. Coleman Hawkins is playing obviously better, a lot more consistent now with how things have gone. Just unfortunately, he cooled off late and really wasn't getting the same shot attempts. But some of that comes down to the fact that he was in foul trouble, and the foul trouble, it's not just that K-State committed more fouls than TCU. It was also the guys that did. I mean, you see the players that ended up with 3 or more, Gasson, Hazen, and Hawkins, as well as Rich, but that one doesn't really factor in. But those other 3, that's big that they were in foul trouble. That really limits some more of the things that you can get going on. So, I don't know. Tough outcome for K-State. And like we said, basically have to win 11 of your next 18 to give yourself a chance to make it into the NCAA tournament. And that's really all that's going to matter this year. We'll see how they do. They get a good opportunity on Tuesday night. Going to be on the road at Oklahoma State. The Cowboys are terrible. They lost on the road in blowout fashion today to West Virginia, who is now 2-0 in Big 12 play, just like Arizona, who beat Cincinnati. Houston has moved to 2-0 in Big 12 play, and Iowa State there as well after they blew out Baylor earlier today in Ames. So that is kind of the current, at least at this point, what the Big 12 is looking like and how things are trending. What's your expectation for the game against Oklahoma State, Drew?
If K-State doesn't find a way against probably the worst team in the Big 12, it's probably time to get ready for next season.
Yeah, that's going to be a good. Hey, we'll see what you got right now, but if
Like
you can't win it, like
Oklahoma State and Arizona State are two teams that you probably have to sweep.
Yeah, I think here's my comp. I think Oklahoma State is the new Nebraska in the Big 12. Not current Nebraska, obviously, but like when Nebraska was in the Big 12 still, you think about it like they just could not get out of the basement of the league.
And you know who Nebraska had a good time beating in Lincoln?
UCLA.
K-State.
Oh, well, yeah, that's true. I thought you were talking about today. They did beat UCLA today.
Those old Nebraska teams used to get K-State fits in Lincoln.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about it with their just ugly uniforms. I mean, Adidas just cranked out some crappers for a stretch there. They still do most of the time. But yeah, I just was thinking about it. And it's not just the basketball thing, too. I was kind of thinking about it's like it's this football team that was on this pedestal and then they've kind of been knocked down recently. So it's going to be interesting to kind of see how that moves on. But yeah, basketball wise, I don't know how Oklahoma State's going to get out of this, because I thought maybe they'd be a little bit better just with a new coach, maybe some more fight, maybe he could send some life in it and they'd be a little more competitive. And I get it's really tough year one, especially in the Big 12 with 16 teams now, but I'm a little surprised at just how bad it has been for them to start. And really, they only lost by 13 to Houston earlier this week, but they only scored 47 points in that game. And
then followed up with 17 in the first half today, or was it 19?
It was 19, but yes, not good either way. They're averaging 48.5 points a game in Big 12 play right now. So if you think K-State's offense was bad today, and it was, the Cats scored 62 points still, and they scored 70 against Cincinnati. So K-State is I was going to say a lot better spot than O State. I don't know if we want to say that.
I will. Oklahoma State won the second half today, and Morgantown by 8, and still lost the game by 19.
Yeah, that's tough. That's a tough outcome. So Oklahoma State is terrible. If K-State can't win, call the season right there, get the coroner in there, and figure out why this thing happened, and just hope that next year's team's a little bit better. So that's what you have to cling on to. Tuesday night is a massive game for K-State this season. You'd think, why? Oklahoma State, crappy team, 0-2. No, it's big for K-State. If they can't win that one, this thing is off the rails, and you can give up any of your last grasp at trying to care about basketball, as K-State loses today 63-62 against TCU. And we will have coverage from Stillwater on Tuesday. That once looked like a solo trip for me. Now it appears that it's going to be a duo, as DY was not going to be able to fly back to Manhattan with the weather that's going on. So he's just going to drive up and meet me in Stillwater on Tuesday. So we'll tag team the Cats and the Pokes from Gallagher-Iba and bring you all the coverage from that. Also, plenty of football coverage over on KSO right now. You probably need some of that to just cleanse yourself with some good news. K-State's picked up a couple of transfers in the last couple of days, and Drew and I will have a big recruiting show on Monday where we talk about the latest with the portal and some of the high school recruiting stuff going on as well. So K-State basketball, bumpy road right now. K-State football, though, they are cruising up, and that makes things a lot of fun following in the offseason. So for Drew Galloway, I'm Mason Vo. Thanks for watching and listening to K-State Online.